get right into it. What's a family secret you found out by accident that flipped your whole view on life? This is a very personal story. I am legally blind. I have been since I was like 2. Multiple surgeries, lots of hospital time, retina specialists, etc. throughout my whole life. My parents told me how lost my sight was, that I cried a lot when you were a baby, and that's it. In adulthood, when I would go to the retinal doctor, they'd ask how it happened, and I'd tell them, well, I guess I cried a lot. They were skeptical. Well, 2 decades after my mother died, and right after my father died, I was told the real story by 2 different extended family members. My mother was always an alcoholic. That part I knew. What I didn't know was that when I was a baby, yes, I cried, and my mother would bang my head on the floor to stop me from crying. It destroyed my retinas. This was confirmed with an unrelated MRI I had done in 2021, where the notes had said something about parental insult. So both my parents took that little tidbit to their graves. I always knew my Uncle Jerry as a kid. He was a cool guy, but mostly a stranger who lived a few hours away from us and would only visit every year or so. We were really close with the rest of the extended family, so this was a bit weird, but I never really thought about it. It wasn't until later that I realized that Uncle Jerry was much older than my dad, who was allegedly my grandparents' oldest child. Turns out, Uncle Jerry was my grandmother's teen pregnancy, who she had given up for adoption and had reconnected with us when I was a baby. It was back in the day when these things were covered up. So she had gone off to the country to live with her older sister while she was pregnant and came home later, so even most of her brothers and sisters didn't even know. Apparently, it was a big shock when he came back into our lives, but they all welcomed him. He was lucky and had been adopted by a wonderful family, and now he's just Uncle Jerry who pops in now and then and sends Christmas candy every year. My grandfather lost his mother as a child, and it was always a sensitive topic for him. But every time I'd asked how it happened, I was told that she was very sick and eventually passed away. When I was about 15 years old and had reproductive health talk to my mother, we touched on the topic of abortion. And then she had let it slip that my great grandmother actually died of consequences of a back alley abortion gone wrong. At the time, abortion was illegal in where we're from, and she decided to go through with it because my great grandfather was an abusive alcoholic and a cheater who had subjected her to marital rape, and she couldn't support the children she already had. What's worse is he later married one of the women he cheated with, and they had more children. That woman proceeded to abuse my 4-year-old grandfather and his sister, for instance, by starving them and tying them to the kitchen table while she fed her children. The kicker was, they all lived in the same village, just a few houses from each other, and the local drunk I'd sometimes see while visiting my grandpa and grandma was actually my great grandfather, with whom my grandpa cut all ties, so he never even got to know my mother, let alone me. It was really shocking to find out that at that age, and I think it really pushed me forward in advocating for women's rights. At the end of my dad's life, he had lost a lot of capacity and some of his more lucid moments that meant he was mostly there but had zero filter. That's how I found out my mom's oldest brother had been accused of molesting his oldest daughter that was required to move out of his family home while the investigation took place. My dad believed he'd done it and talked about struggling and fighting with my mom to not let her brother near us. But my mom and her whole family supported my uncle. He lived with his parents for the duration. My mom refused to cut off or keep him away. Eventually, my cousin recanted her claims, and my uncle moved back in, and everyone pretended everything was fine. My cousin was always regarded as troubled and outcast by most of that side of the family. For context, my uncle has always been weirdly touchy. The first time I ever understood it was weird or felt weird about it was at my high school graduation party, when I was talking to some friends of mine and my uncle came up behind me and started rubbing my shoulders. I didn't know who it was, but I saw my friends' faces drop and twist. After my dad revealed the story, my mind was flooded with memories of my touchy uncle. I still don't know what really happened. I don't know if his behavior was or was not appropriate with me or other kids. But it did set my mind on one thing: peace at all costs only protects abusers and creeps, and I was never going to be complicit like my family. I've never been able to bring myself to ask my mom about it. Grandpa was a closeted his entire life. He knew all of the local power players and big deals because he was the manager of a menswear department at the fanciest department store in town. I still remember walking around downtown with him. He could never make it more than a block without someone wanting to stop and chat. My uncle was also gay, and because our city isn't very big, there was very limited queer scene when he came out in the 80s. The family found out because he started hearing a lot of, "Oh, so you're so and so. I know your father." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Grandpa and a few dozen other married men used to go up to an isolated roundabout in a local park. They called it the Fruit Loop, and get busy in the bushes. Half of the fathers on my mom's street growing up were apparently in the Fruit Loop Club. Anyway, the whole thing got exposed. Grandma served him divorce papers. He unsuccessfully committed suicide, but things were mostly calmed down, and Grandma was remarried by the time I was born, so I didn't know any of it. I suspected, and he vehemently denied, but only got confirmation when we were moving. Grandpa in the hospice, and my uncle, who is blind, told me to go in a specific dresser drawer and destroy everything in it. I did my duty and didn't look too hard at anything, but yeah. He was a great grandfather and I miss him dearly. I'm glad he had my mom because otherwise I wouldn't exist. But I do wish he felt more comfortable being himself before he died. I found out my mom was one of the Tennessee Children's Home Society stolen babies. Google Georgia Tan. She and her sister were taken by this woman, and their parents were tricked into singing away their parental rights with promises of sending the girls to excellent schools and other lies. Both of the girls were taken to different states and literally sold to new parents. It was called adoption, but it was a black market baby ring. My mom found all of this out when I was 15. My mom abandoned me and my two older brothers when I was very small, and my dad raised us, thank God. Over time, I came to understand that my mom had been badly abused by her adopted mother and was mentally ill in part from the abuse. I'm the only girl, so I always resented her for leaving me and for not having a mom. So I unfortunately, by the time I understood that all my mom had been through, she had already passed away. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the Reader's Digest version. It's a lot to carry around. This will probably get buried, but since you asked, trigger warning, this is pretty gruesome. In 2006, my dad, who was a severe alcoholic, was sent to prison for voluntary manslaughter. The victim was my grandmother, his mother. I was told that he pushed her and she hit her head and she fell. I believe this because despite my dad's addiction, he was never really violent. Plus, he only served about 5 years for manslaughter, so it surely couldn't been anything like murder, right? Wrong. A few years after he was released, my dad forwards an email he received from my mom, which said, "Unlike the Menendez brothers, you used your bare hands." He CC'd my mom on this email so she could see that he sent it to me. My mom, bless her little heart, still hadn't quite figured out the difference between reply and reply all. So she responds to his email thinking she's only responding to him. She tells him about how she had been protecting me from the truth all of these years, that my cousin had read the autopsy report, and how my aunt and uncle told her to tell me what actually happened, but she didn't want me to know. I immediately realized there was more to the story than I'd been told, and when I saw the line about the autopsy report, it occurred to me that it's a public record and that I could easily obtain. So I drove down to the medical examiner's office and got it. Turns out, my dad has actually strangled my grandmother to death while blackout drunk. I was shocked. My dad gave his attorney permission to give me all of the other documents relating to the case. I met up with his attorney and gave a massive stack of paperwork, police reports, court transcripts, even crime scene photos. He was originally charged with murder, but took a plea deal for involuntary manslaughter, aka a crime of passion, hence the very short prison sentence. So, yeah, that was definitely the biggest family secret that I found out by accident. This all happened over a decade ago, and while I've mostly come to terms with it, it definitely still fucks with my head. The biggest problem with secrets is that they're not very good about staying secret. My mother lied to me my whole life about my dad. They split when I was 3, and I was told that he deserted us and wasn't paying child support, and that he never tried to get in touch. When he did start paying child support, and my mother won a legal case back for back payments, she blew through 20K on we still don't know what. When I was a teen, she would show me receipts for child support payments under $20 as an excuse as to why we were so poor. 20 plus years later, when we sat down to reconnect, he showed receipts, returned sealed letters, and the divorce judge stating that I was supposed to spend summers with him and get to see him on the other holidays. Those $20 child support payments? They were beyond what was required by the state, and the state chose to send them separately. So she would hide the fact that she was actually paying and paying extra to try to manipulate me further. Turns out, he was the stable, sane parent, and I didn't get to find out until after a work accident that left him with a TBI. I've gone NC with her and will not speak with her ever again. She will never get to meet her grandson. And that's all for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more content. Have a good one.